Welcome, this is Joshua Benoist in Autodesk Product Support. We're on video 1 where we're talking how to add leg dimensions to a duct elbow. Here is the problem statement. Pause the video if you need to. Alright, the goal is to have some legs on our duct elbows. So let's insert an elbow. I want to start off there. I want to make sure we're on the HVAC workspace and we're on the Home tab of the ribbon, and we're going to start the duct fitting add command. So let's add a rectangular elbow, and I'm going to choose a rectangular mitered elbow. I'm going to use this transition one, but because it's more complicated than this mitered one. This mitered one's a little simpler, but this transition one allows me to demonstrate some things that get more points across in the video. So let's switch to the Part Filter tab, and I want to expand on this property name here. There, we can stretch that dialog. Later on in the video, I'm going to talk about making certain dimensions visible. When we make them visible, that means that they are going to show up here in the Part Filter tab, and that they will be available just like the width and the height is, so that we can choose a value and specify the width and height. You'll notice in here that there is no value here for the legs for that dimension. I believe right here it says C1. These images don't always pertain to like RW1. It does pertain here, but they're not always in sequence. So anyway, my point is that these images aren't accurate, one, and two, next point is that when we make things visible, they show up in here in this list. That's it. Alright. So I'm going to say close there. Let's go to the Manage tab, Content Builder. Make sure the part domain says duct. And then we're going to find rectangular and elbows. And I'm going to choose the rectangular duct mitered transition elbow. And I'm going to click this third icon up here, Modify Part Size. Okay. So you can see this thing's pretty complicated. And the way all of our fittings are made is you make a path and you take a shape and you extrude it along the path. Well, what does that mean? Let's say that this green line, let's pretend that that's our path. It's not in this case, but let's say that it was. It's just a straight line with two endpoints, and we've got a profile which is in the shape of a square. If the center point of that square were affixed to the center point of this line right here, and this square was extruded along the line, it would form a rectangular three-dimensional shape. Well, this is our path, right? If I zoom in real tight on this. So here's one path right there. And it comes and it stops and it angles downwards. So here's the second part of the path. Right there. And right now this path here says 45 degrees, but it can be 90 degrees and turn this path downwards 90 degrees, and that's how you get your elbow, is it goes this way and then down 90 degrees. And you get a mitered elbow out of it. When they extruded the rectangular shape, it formed this three-dimensional rectangular leg right here. So right now these dimensions are pretty small. Let's make them bigger. If we go into the Modeling tab, Model Parameters, these model parameters only affect this model right here. Does not affect our what gets inserted into model space. These are just like the dimensions that helps us to build our part over here. So I want to make that bigger. And right now, this length A10 and length A9, they both say 0.1. I want to make that bigger. So I'm going to right click and say edit. And I'm going to make that at least 4. And where's length A9? It's also set to 0.1. I'm going to make that 4. Okay. So see how this shape grew, this profile here? And if we come over here, that little bitty rectangular thing is no longer little bitty. It's this big rectangle there and this big one there. Might be a little bit too big, so maybe 4 is too big. Let's come back here, say edit. Let's make it about half that size. Okay, so there. And then we can change that angle from 45 degrees to make it more like 90. Didn't like that. Path A1 is still 45 over here. Well, I think we broke it if we did. When it does that, it means it broke. Value. Alright, we're going to set this back to 45 because it doesn't like the value. I basically just wanted to show you how this would normally bend downwards and look more like a elbow, a mitered elbow that you're expecting. So for the sake of the video, we're just going to move on. I just want to show you how to make the leg dimensions visible is the main point of the video, and how to identify what those dimensions are. So I expect those legs, we typically make them about an inch long when we model them in here, and length A2 is equal to 1 inch right there. I can see that. And this is probably just one of the legs on the elbow. I'm expecting another one, not right there because that's too small, but here's length A1 between those 2 points, and that's also equal to 1. So that's probably the other leg on this elbow. And if we come back here to the model parameters, let's look at length A1 and length A2. So it says length A1 equals to length C1. C means it's a custom parameter, and it's set to equal to 1. Length A2 is also equal to length A1. So length A1 and length A2 are both linked to this C1 down here. Okay, so that C1 is our leg dimension. Length A1 is using a formula. It's saying I'm equal to C1. C1 is using a value. So all we need to do now, we go from the model parameters down to the size parameters. In the size parameters, we say edit configuration, and this pops up. And let's stretch this over as far as we can. There we go. So we look at this, and here's that thing called visible that I was telling you about. So here's the part name. It's visible in that duct fitting add dialog. The height is visible. The width is visible for connector 1. And since this is a transition elbow, you also see height 2 and width 2 also visible. And This is the engineering part ID for the, with the ASHRAE, allows you to figure out the duct friction through the fitting. So anyway, that's true as well. But the rest of these are mostly false until we get across here to length A10, which is the one-line profile height, and go a little further here till we see path A1. This is whether it's 90 degrees or 45. And here's that length C1. All we need to do is make this one set it to true. Okay, so we've basically made this thing visible, and all we have to do is exit here and save our changes. And now when we go back to the Home tab and insert the rectangular elbow, the mitered transition one, if we go to Part Filter and expand on this here, you see the body tap length there now, which is that length C1 value that we set to be visible. So here, now we can specify this to be one of the preset values, or we can set some, like 1 foot, make it real long. It's going to ask you if you want to, oh, the part does not support custom sizing. So that's another thing. It's going to accept it though. Okay. So let's just set some values here, like a 10 by 10. To an also 10 by 10. Okay. Yeah, it's not going to let me. What we got to do is go back into Content Builder and edit that fitting one last time. So when you see that, go into this thing, it's the fitting options, and this custom sizing flag, check it. That allows us to make custom sizes. Say OK, and now we're going to exit, save it, and let's try that one more time. Elbow, transition elbow, 10 by 10 by 10, because it's a transition fitting. It's looking for these dimensions, height and width, and these dimensions. Since height is fixed by this first one, it only asks us that second width there. And then the tap length, we were going to make it some ridiculously large number just to emphasize that, and we can put it in there now. There. So you can see that we've adjusted the length of this fitting from here to here as a foot, and it's a 10 by 10 fitting. So anyway, that's how you make those visible. Let's look at one other fitting. So there were two different mitered elbows, and I just want to make sure that, if you don't want to use this transition elbow, if we just come down here to the regular mitered elbow, this is a more simpler, straightforward part. We might be able to edit these values. So let's see if we can look at the calculations. So it's using a formula here, so that we can't modify. So you won't be able to edit this part at all because it's an old one. So your other choice is to remake a brand new elbow, and basically you're better off just using this transition elbow here and editing it like I showed you, to make that length C1 variable visible, and then you can just type in whatever length you want for those legs. And that's it. Thank you very much.